What is up, everybody? Welcome to What's Trainwreck Watching, sponsored by Batavia Downs Casino and Gaming. We're here for The Boys, Season 4, Episode 5. I'm here joined by Maniac. Episode, Beware of the Jobberwock, my son. Maniac, what is a Jobberwock? Do you know? I didn't know what this was when I was looking up the title of this episode.
I did research. I did time. I'm ready for What's Trainwreck Watching. What's the Jabberwock? So this was a poem regarding the dangerous of creatures, the danger of potential creatures that a young man observed, I believe, in the story in Alice in Wonderland. Though that was what I looked up. So this was kind of a warn of foreboding creatures, which obviously we figure out in this boys episode is indeed something to behold, indeed something to be marveled at. With that said, I would say the thing I was marveling at was what a moving episode this was for everyone. I think no character is leaving this episode the same as they went in. It felt like a movie. It felt like an early Saturday morning at a big major in the PGA. Everyone was moving.
That's a great point. Yeah, honestly, that's a great way to put it. No one is the same after this episode. We kind of got, it was, I saw someone put on an episode reaction that it was like a filler episode, but there's no filler episodes with the boys. And it was kind of where you're like, okay, like there's some big pieces that still need to get moved and we're waiting to see on those interactions. But this kind of, as you said, pushing all those chips into where we see some big confrontations going forward. So the big part of the episode, we started at V52 Expo, which is just like Comic-Con or Disney's whatever they do now on some super steroids. I like the phase 7 through 19 joke.
You got to be ready. You got to have those storylines mapped out. I saw some of the I watched a breakdown which was literally going through all of the movie titles. It was hysterical. But you've got the 7. You've got Return of the 7, and then you got Dawn of the 7. Like, it's just hysterical. Like it was branded out exactly like if you welded the DCEU and the MCU together. It was hysterical.
Oh man, I gotta check that out. I gotta see what all those titles were. I remember seeing the Guardians one with the Gen V.
So their Flash equivalent. Their Flash equivalent is A Train into the multiverse. So basically he ran too fast or something, and he blended the timelines or something together. But hysterical. They have the Tech Knight, which people were saying was a shout out to the Batman, because of the font and the way it was being said. And then you just have them talking about A Train talking about his I forget what it was, Double Standard or something, a TV show. The most expensive TV show of all time with the reshoots of the reshoots. Again, Marvel and everyone will just continue to give the boys fodder and they'll continue to make the best of it. It was hysterical. You could have done this episode on just the Vought Expo alone.
And I thought that was going to be more of the focus coming into it. But that's what's so great about this show is they give you the little tease the week before, and then they've got the other storylines on the side with it. I feel like this was the most pointed jab at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, though. And it was enjoyable. The Expo, we got to see the full trailer for Training with A-Train. Can't wait to see that flick come out. But there was some drama going on at the Expo with A-Train and just dealing with his, he's a traitor right now. He's a
double agent. He's a double A Train. So I had to rewatch the scene with him and Sister Sage because, again, a lot of times I always say this, and I know you're the same way. The first time you watch for entertainment, the second time you watch to actually know what the hell happened. But she was clearly talking to him, and then he said later in the episode he felt uncomfortable, and I was like, well, did she really suspect him that much? And I didn't realize that she said that those files get up and run out of there. Basically pointing the finger at him big time. I know she asked about it, but I didn't realize the running comment until I rewatched it.
Yeah, she's on it. She just doesn't know the best way to kind of expose it yet and blow that whole thing open. So A-Train goes to Ashley for some help and lists her and is like, hey, listen, we're in this together. It was a very interesting dynamic there with Ashley in this episode, both with A-Train and our guy Cameron Coleman, who just gave her the old kick, the boot. Listen, man, this ain't doing it for me anymore. I don't know they had some kind of weird agreement going on, but Cameron Coleman was he's a big piece of this episode early on, especially at the Expo, and then as we saw later on, his fate was not so great. So what did you think of the way that the Expo kind of played out? For, you know, we saw A-Train and Ashley with their interaction. We also saw Homelander show up, and Homelander was still kind of reeling from his visit back home, quote unquote, last week. And what his reaction to that was, recommitting to Ryan. That's the way I took it, right? Like, he just kind of centered him in its own twisted way. And he's like, all I care about is, I think he says that. He says, all I care about in this world is you and me. I think that's even more terrifying than any other Homelander version.
Oh, believe me, proud father and like actually sensible, like straight, like peace of mind Homelander is probably the most dangerous Homelander for everybody else. The one advantage they have is that they know his vulnerabilities, they know his susceptibilities. But you hit you hit it right on the head with the comment. Is that last week's episode reminded him, I guess, and again, this was my, I've watched some recaps, so I'm not taking all credit for this, but that in growing up, he had no control over his childhood. He had no say in anything. He had no even though he had all those superpowers, even though he had all that, the control over anyone, he had no power over anyone when he was that age. So you see it right away that the director, the Schmarmy director, who, by the way, all these side characters are hysterical. I don't know what this guy's name is, but the scummy director or whatever.
Andy, I think.
Grinding, basically saying like, well, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. Like, that's like the beauty of like being us, essentially. And then basically embarrassing the guy. Very funny. I thought that was very well done. And yeah, good example of Homelander growth. That's what we were talking about, right? Every character kind of gets a little bit different in this episode, kind of gets to a new level. And that's why you watch a TV show, to watch characters develop. And they did a pretty good job of that here. It wasn't too overt. It made sense given the past episodes. He's still having the nightmares, by the way.
Yes, he's still, and that's...
Or the flashbacks, whatever you want to call them.
That's what worries me the most, is he still has that little bit of unhinged, but he was under control by being in control of somebody, right? Like, he was finally getting through to Ryan and having that communication, like you said, and they're working on that being an actual father figure. Yeah, he has a conversation. He's like, listen, I never had a choice. His little spiel about slavery was both twisted and hilarious, hearing it come from him like that, and then saying that him and Ryan were now emancipated and could do what they want. And Ryan liked that little bit of power. That he's like, "Do you think you were going to be mad at me, or are you mad at me for doing that? Whatever." He's like, "No, you made that choice on your own. You do what you need to do." And then later on, we get at the Expo. I think the only other time we really see them at the Expo is we know that Andy is taking advantage of his power dynamics there with his PAs or his actresses or whatever else. A weird dude, as there's a lot of weird people in this boy's universe. And Ryan said, "No, you gotta apologize," and then just humiliates him, and the PA just goes. She slapped him at least like 10 times. Like, that girl was going off on the director, and that man's still gonna have a job. I feel like too.
What a week for people getting slapped on What's Trainwreck Watching. You got Kristen Cole getting slapped before, some hanky-panky action in the Red Keep, and then you got, this director getting slapped by the PA. It seemed much justified in both cases. But yeah, no, it was great action at the Vox. Well, we've seen the growth all around. And then the funny thing is, amongst this, we haven't even talked about him, but you could go all day about him. I mean, you got the Deep, who just literally doesn't care about anything else. He feels great. He's back in the 7. He thinks that everything is hunky-dory. Deep is just absolutely like ignorance is bliss is, the poster board character for the Deep.
Yeah, man. And he has that little interaction with Coleman there at the Expo too, where Coleman's like, "Listen, I know about your eight-legged friend in your closet or whatever." So that's really the only thing holding him back. But other than that, he's like feeling good. He's up on stage, confident. The Deep has gone. I think his confidence has gone back and forth more than anybody else in this show. And yeah, he's definitely feeling good with his position and everything else. That's pretty much what we had from Homelander and from the 7 at the Expo. I think the biggest thing that we haven't mentioned yet is Sister Sage kind of giving the look to Homelander, like a little worried about where his mental state's at. And, you know, we've talked about her and thinking like, oh, she thinks she can control Homelander and kind of whatever grand plan she thinks she has going on right now. I feel like she thinks it's slipping a little bit from her because she doesn't really have Homelander's. We haven't even seen them really interact in 2 episodes now after she was by his side.
Yeah.
You know, all the way through.
Well, I think they kind of need to nerf Sister Sage, right? Because if she's just dominating every situation, then like, you know, she's kind of unbeatable. So they showed obviously how she like kind of has that one, you know, weakness that she does kind of like to, you know, almost like I would just say, well, what, quote unquote, get stupid by stabbing herself in the brain, and stuff like that. And this is a note, so I'll give it credit, but the one thing that seems to bother her that people are taking a notice of, or that seems to give her an issue or a struggle, is when she's dealing with like a human situation. When like someone's going on pure emotion, and when there's really no reason involved into it, when there's no logic involved into it. So when Firecracker came at her and kind of was just like threatening her, like she almost didn't know how to act because like Firecracker was giving her sass, like Firecracker was giving her emotion. You know what I mean? And like, and that kind of gave her like a cause for pause. So that was one little notice on that. But yeah, again, it's great. The 7 was a full 7. We didn't even need any you know, friggin' Black Noir in this episode. It was all very well done. Very good episode.
Great episode. And we get them when we get to the end of the episode, our guy Cameron, with the last thing we'll talk about with the 7 before we move on to where the boys were up to, all of them in this episode. Ashley came through for A-Train. He said, listen, I need you on my side or you're coming down with me if you try to take me down. And she planted those phone calls, I guess, to Mother's Milk on his phone. And Homelander says, listen, we're taking back over this world. We're not superheroes, but wrathful gods was the term. And that sounded a little terrifying for where we're going for the next 3 episodes. And then they all kind of just took their turn taking out our guy Cameron. Well, he won't be on VNN anytime soon. That's for sure, or ever again, I think. So shout out that guy.
Cameron Coleman's not going to have any time to retract those stories about the Deep, unfortunately.
He's not. The Deep still, at least. But hey, the Deep's safe. Like things all coming up for the Deep. He's safe from his rumors and his secrets getting out at least for a little bit. But yeah, so the 7. At least right now, besides A-Train, pretty united front, and Homelander is ready to start taking action too. So we'll see what happens there. But we got the boys on their end, what they're trying to do.
By the way, sorry, real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Was the 7 basically beating on Cameron Coleman? That was a big part of like the trailer, wasn't it, for the season? Like you knew that someone was getting their ass beat in the skyscraper.
Yeah, there's a couple shots in the trailer of all of them in that room together. Yeah, taking out somebody and getting into a fight. Gotcha. So I believe that's what it was.
I always love when we get to that big moment because you wonder that what they built the entire like cinema trailer around, and that was the perfect example there.
And who it could be.
Of course. But I'll tell you who it can be, Micah. Speaking of entertaining, speaking of blockbuster, we have Rockin' the Downs tonight at Batavia.
There we go.
Downs. You're listening to this episode right now. I know you're thinking, oh, maybe it's 5:30. My plans are already set in stone. No way. We got a great show tonight. We got Barracuda performing at Batavia Downs. So go get your ticket. I believe it's a $13 ticket, but you get a $10 free play. So you can't beat that deal. And the opener, Nerds Gone Wild.
Oh,
Nerds Gone Wild. Great time. So, yeah, you get there at 7 o'clock. Nerds Gone Wild to be going on. So, if you're listening to this podcast, get to Rockin' the Downs tonight at Batavia Downs. But, Micah, speaking of craziness, like Batavia Downs, the boys and Stan Edgar getting into some craziness on their side of business.
Making a deal with the devil is what I have up here, which is really what they did. They brought it. They got Stan. They found out about this virus that they think can take, Butcher found out about this virus that can take out Soups. And that did not sit well with Starlight and Kimoko, first of all. They were like, what are we talking about here? Because they don't trust, neither of those two trust Butcher at all, for good reason at all. But they find out about this virus. They need to get a hold of it somehow. So they go to jail and they get Stan Edgar. and they make a deal with him. I guess through their connections with the government there, that they can get him out if he gets them to the virus. So they go take a trip to the lab, and then we see
I think they got the pardon probably because they leveraged the Newman situation, right? Because the president does want Newman to get taken out, so I'm sure they mentioned that the end game was to use the virus to take out Newman. That's what I'm just assuming. But you're right. A presidential pardon basically just poofs up out of nowhere.
Yeah, just a nice little plot device there to get him out and get them to see the wreckage. I don't know, they never really mention or piece together, or at least say they piece together it was Homelander there, but are shocked by what's going on. See the tests going on. All the viruses are gone. So they go out to the barn, and who else shows up? Or does Newman show up? Now I'm forgetting. Does Newman show up at the barn, or does she show up at the office?
No, at the barn. They're just starting to walk and check out the animals in the barn and kind of piece it together. And she just kind of briskly walks in. Classic boys, just like ambushed out of nowhere by their opponent. How many times is Victoria Newman gonna just like walk up on this crew this season?
That's what I was just about to say. That she literally just always shows up on her own time, her own place, no matter where they are. Is like, hey guys, like, how you doing? Makes me wonder, maybe she's got some information. Maybe she's working somebody, that we haven't figured it out yet. Who knows there? But so we got Stan Edgar in play here. We have the showdown back with Newman and just their whole betrayals of each other. And he says that to her, like, what are you upset that I might have betrayed you? And it's just like weird interactions with them. They're exploring on the farm, trying to find Samir, I believe, to see and see what kind of testing they're doing and everything, and realize all these animals are souped up. Every single one has got some V. They're all on the juice. They're all going crazy. They're getting attacked by sheep, getting attacked by bulls, everything else. What did you make of this scene? This was like one of the most chaotic set pieces and couple scenes I think I remember from The Boys. We got sheep flying through the air, eating people. It was a little absurd. I'm not gonna lie.
Do you remember, there's a couple of, they're not all created equal, but when they were in Congress and everyone's heads started exploding, with Newman, every so often the Boys just throws in kind of like a wrench into if you thought this was just going to be your standard blank episode with blank doing blank, it's absolutely not going to be the case. So that was what it was to me. Even you have the subversion with the souped up bull getting ready to charge him. All of a sudden it gets devoured by a bunch of sheep. It's just very funny shit like that. Again, is it a little bit over the top? Of course, but that's where this show's made its bread and butter. It's almost like the Boys being over the top is almost like Family Guy doing a cutaway. You might not love them all, but you're gonna ride or die with them because that next one could be the money.
Yeah, that's a great call, and they do it so well. It's out of nowhere, but it makes sense to what they're doing with it. So we know that these guys are all souped up. We find out, I think it's in the water supply, or they tried it on one and he got loose, and then it started infecting everybody at this farm. And Samir, who is doctor and also Newman's husband, or just I don't know if they're married or whatever. They're in the relationship. Lover,
some type
baby dad, something like that. And he says he's got one little thing left of this virus, and they can either send it out to try to take out. They're locked in the barn. They're getting chased down by all the sheep. He said we can either put it under this other dead doctor that's sitting there and try to get them as to kind of poison them. And Butcher's like, oh no, we need that. What are you talking about? Let's take that and let's run, get out of here. Survival of the fittest. At this point, Butcher just doesn't care about anybody's life. I guess he thinks, Stan Edgar really couldn't keep up. Old man couldn't run with them. So he's like, well, if Edgar dies, what's the worst case out of this? This will all work out. But they end up going with the plan to try to poison the sheep. And then they still end up having to run anyways. But the sheep do end up.
Butcher's got kind of a vibe going on where, instead of having an A to Z plan, I think it's more a survive and advance plan right now.
That's a great point.
What I mean? Instead of having an end game, instead of having it all figured out, even last week, it's oh, like, can you just make sure like Ryan doesn't end up with Homelander? Like, basically the smallest, I mean, the ridiculously massive request, and you're just like firing it off to who doesn't even trust him given like scene to scene. So again, you're just seeing like again Butcher, who is so confident in season one, and then so confused in season two with the wife being back, and then so like aimed at one thing in season three when they were actually working with the government and everything. It's kind of all over the place, which is, again, that's where his character's at this point. So it's kind of cool to see that dynamic. But again, you're like, it really is like scene to scene. You don't even know the allegiances in the boys. It feels like you kind of alluded to earlier.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, because they're having that conversation with Newman where she exposes him for trying to make a deal with her behind the back, and Starlight's like, "What the fuck, dude? Like, what are you doing?" And he's like, "I didn't go through with it, but it's just one of those things. Like, he's been all over the map trying to work with anybody."
He tried to say that proves. He goes, "That proves I'm above the level," which is so funny. Like, it really is like crazy. Yeah, and then let's run over real quick because we've been talking the boys, and I want to end with the boys and everything that happens at the farm, kind of. But
okay.
So let's skirt over to the hospital. We get again, we get three centralized stories here. We get what happens with the boys in the farm when they try and go to get the Newman. And by the way, that's combining with Gen V, obviously. The what is it? The Godalkin University or whatever. Yes. God U, which is pretty hysterical. But yeah, so you got a lot going on, a big movie episode. I can't believe anyone would say this is a filler episode. But we kind of get the zombie dad thing we alluded to. He's kind of got phasing powers. Pretty nuts. Pretty insane sequence of events, honestly.
Yeah, so he wakes up and everything seems good. They're having a nice conversation. He's talking about his honeymoon with the wife there, the old wife.
His eyes were starting to go, right? Like when everything looked fine and physically was fine, his eyes were starting to get like a little like crazy, right?
Yeah.
If I recall.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he was losing it a little bit. You could see it, but he was still acting normal enough. Yep. And then he disappears, and we find him with a man's heart in his hand and the body just completely destroyed. And then he runs away, phasing through the wall back in. And then he's uncontrollably phasing into people. I think he killed like 3 or 4 people before they finally got to him the next time. And yeah, this is exactly this zombie kind of, it was weird because it threw his brain back to he thought Huey was 11. He was talking about going to get him a toy and stuff like that. So he knew who he was and knew kind of like how he existed in the world, but it was like a different time, or just really confused. He was obviously not of right mind. And then he saw the mom and was like, how could you? And then that anger came out and he's going after her. And it was really sad watching this, because you knew it wasn't going to end well, right? Like at all with how they were going to have to take care of him in this building. Like Huey didn't have any other. He had to handle this himself. Like it was something that there's no way he could get help from any of the boys. There's no one he could call and come like support this situation or anything. And he just wanted to do right by his dad. He didn't want his dad to go, be remembered as this like murderous psychopath more than anything else too. You know what I mean? Like if he got out and got loose, who knows what kind of damage he did. But do you think, I guess, do you think that like this was like a spot where Huey and the mom like built that relationship where they're still going to be kind of like interacting going forward? Like how does she play into this now?
You know what? That's a great point. I mean, I don't mean to be complimentary too much on the show, but you just broke down that situation perfectly. Huey kind of first off wasn't going to go through it to begin with. He wanted to save himself the pain of like what could happen, everything like that. And then it does happen, and it's literally the worst case scenario. His dad's on a murderous rampage, can't control himself. He's basically like brain hopping from like life to life. But yeah, so then he has to like basically put his own dad down again. And you're right. That could be a situation where through the trauma and through the stress of the situation,
we lost you there for a second, Maniac. But I think I know what you were saying. Oh, I know what you were getting to there with he could have lost it. And even they have that conversation for a second where it's like, listen, man, like I couldn't trust you. When they're talking about the power of the attorney, he's like, I couldn't trust you. Like, we were gonna put down the cat and you wouldn't let me put down the cat, and then he exploded basically. Like, why would I trust you with my life if I was suffering going through that? So we're kind of talking about how, and that's the whole thing with Huey. Like, Huey's never been Butcher. That's the thing. Is Huey is, if we're talking about this show, Butcher has wanted to turn Huey into him and like meld him along and everything, but Huey's always been a better person. He's a good guy when it comes down to it. He got dragged into this because of A-Train more than anything, right? Like, that's it. That's the biggest thing. Like, what I was just saying as you were gone for a second, I said Huey's never had this in him. Like, Butcher wanted to bring it out of him. Huey is the most human person on this show. He never was going to be able to, like, he never wanted to kind of go through any of this stuff as it goes through.
You said it. He didn't have that killer instinct. He couldn't put down Jar Jar when he was basically about to explode. But now he has to put down his dad when he kind of created this situation. So yeah, it's absolutely an accelerant. Apologize about the lag. I think I'm back now.
You're good.
But yeah, definitely like you know, and it makes perfect sense because Huey couldn't have had this growth amongst the boys and everyone where, you know, he's kind of gets neutered by their machismo or, you know, their experiences, obviously. But with that said, yeah, excited to see what it could mean for Huey and obviously the mom down the line. Now, just kind of putting a bow on it here for What's Training Watch. We got everybody moving forward. We got everything going on. Now, I got to talk to you real quick about, because I told you I looked a lot of notes and I came across one theory. So I watched like New Rock Stars, which is a very popular one.
Yep.
They did not mention this theory at all, which I found surprising, which makes me think it might be a little bit more niche. But what is Negan's character again?
He's like the CIA.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm sorry. Did you know his name? Because I just haven't heard his name in like the 3 episodes he's been in.
I really don't. I'll look it up.
Okay, well, that's why I'm calling him Negan. And I'm telling you right now, I buy this theory 1,000%. Negan is Butcher's like previous subconscious of before he met the boys. He's got the killer instinct. He's kind of like the devil on his shoulder. And then you think to the scenes, nobody else has interacted with the Negan character. He hasn't had any other kind of like impact on the story besides talking to Butcher and kind of telling him that he has to go for like I think he even said like, you know, yeah, but like they're a good bunch or whatever, and like the Negan guy goes, well, yeah, that's why like we're not like that. You know what I mean? Like, so he's kind of alluding to it. So the theory that I read is that this guy is like the conscience in Butcher, and it's kind of like the devil on his shoulder. Like potentially Butcher could do something like really terrible, you know, at the behest of this guy, and there's going to be some kind of Fight Club revelation. And I'm definitely in on that theory for sure.
Yeah, I'm seeing his name's Joe Kessler, and I'm seeing these theories that is Joe Kessler a hallucination of Butcher. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
When because Butcher cuts the leg off of what's his name, Eason. I can't remember the name of Samir. I knew there was a bunch of E's in a row somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But with that said, cuts his leg off or whatever. And is he in that scene with him? Because in the theory they said that he's talking to him and the guy looks off into the distance like there's almost like nobody there, and he's wondering what the fuck Butcher is doing.
He is there in the scene. He's kind of standing off. He's not.
He's like around the corner or something, right? So
he's like almost kind of behind the wall. Yeah.
Yep. There's a weird vibe again. So there's definitely something.
And how would he have gotten there and no one noticed that they were the only people on this? Yeah. At this place, it's very strange. And the theory, and because we know that the one thing we didn't mention is because we wanted to bring it back to here, as they're running away and they kind of dispatch of all the animals by using the virus or whatever, Samir's gone missing. So the assumption is that, and then we see that they show Newman his leg in a bag. And so we have the assumption like, oh man, he's the one who got caught, like survival of the fittest type deal, whatever. And then at the end, that's where we notice Butcher is holding him captive. Basically, he says, you're going to make us more of this virus. Yeah. And Joe Kessler is there, but they don't interact at all. He doesn't say anything to Butcher. He doesn't say anything to Samir. Samir doesn't interact with him. He's just looking at Butcher the whole time. But this is Butcher again. We don't know what he really wants to do. We don't know who he's working with or if he's just working for himself. And he goes completely rogue here. And he's like, I'm going to get this virus. And they clearly they don't know how it works yet. Particularly or they know that it can like just take people out, but they don't know if they can control it or how it spreads or anything else really. I think he did say it spreads maybe he did say it spreads a couple different ways, but I don't think that they've done enough research on this to go wide with this thing. And Bush is just full steam ahead because I guess this is just all in pursuit of killing Homelander. That's what we're getting to more than anything else. And Newman. He wants to take out Newman for the president, but we know where he ends up. He's got to get Ryan from Homelander. And I know he mentions in here it was not enough to take out Homelander, but you got to think that that's what he's going to try to end up pushing for is like, how can we make this thing stronger? And he's just unhinged. And now he's really, if he's just talking to himself all this time, which is such a great theory. I'm mad that I hadn't even realized that or thought of that before this. Then yeah, no one should be trusting this man at all. So they're in trouble. The boys as a whole group, we talked about last week how fractured they are as a group, and it's only even greater. And now, like you said, nobody's coming out unscathed with this. Huey is going to be traumatized. Like clearly, who knows what we're going to get from Huey in the next couple episodes. Frenchie, I believe we didn't even talk about Frenchie, but Frenchie went and turned himself in, right?
Yeah,
like that's Frenchie's in jail. So Kimiko doesn't know. She doesn't know there. Starlight's having issues with her powers. She couldn't lighten up there when they were in the thing. So they're all having crazy issues. And on the other side of things, Homelander has the Seven as united as he has since the beginning of the show, really. I mean, except A-Train. But what's A-Train's now looking at this situation like, fuck, dude, there's like there's 6 of them and 1 of me, like, and they know there's a rat in here. Now they know that they think it's somebody else is the rat, but we know Sister Sage knows the truth. It's not a good situation for, I guess, the anti-Seveners here.
Seriously, definitely not a good situation for the Starlighters. But with that said, great situation for everyone tuning in here. What's Trainer watching? We got 3 episodes and more to go. Can't wait to see what happens with our favorite crew.
Can't wait. Yeah, it's going to be a blast. So thank you all for joining. Go have a great Friday night. Get down to the Downs. Go see Barracuda. That sounds like a hell of a time. And Nerds Gone Wild. So you got time. Get down there. We'll talk to you. We'll be back for House of the Dragon talk. But until then, have a good night now. See you later.